My name is Margaret Chen, and I'm 62 years old. I've lived a quiet life, worked hard, and saved every penny I could. After my husband Daniel passed away 5 years ago from a sudden heart attack, I threw myself into my work as a hospital administrator. It was the only thing that kept me going through those dark months. The grief was overwhelming, but somehow I managed to keep putting one foot in front of the other. Daniel and I had always dreamed of owning a little place by the ocean. We'd spend our Sunday mornings drinking coffee and looking at real estate listings, imagining our golden years spent walking along the shore, collecting shells, and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. But life got in the way, as it often does. There were bills to pay, emergencies to handle, and somehow 30 years just slipped away before we knew it. After Daniel died, I made a promise to myself and to his memory. I would make our dream come true, even if he couldn't be there to share it with me. So I saved and saved, taking on extra shifts, skipping vacations, saying no to expensive dinners out. Every dollar went into my beach house fund. It took me 3 long years, but I finally had enough for a down payment. The house I found wasn't fancy by any means. It was a modest 2-bedroom cottage about 100 yards from the beach, with weathered blue siding and white shutters that needed a fresh coat of paint. But it had a front porch with a swing, a small garden where I could grow tomatoes, and from the upstairs bedroom window, if you stood on your tiptoes, you could just catch a glimpse of the ocean sparkling in the morning light. I closed on the house on a Tuesday in March. I remember the date because it would have been Daniel's 65th birthday. I sat in the lawyer's office, signing paper after paper, and I could almost feel Daniel there with me, his hand on my shoulder, proud of what I'd accomplished. When I got the keys, I drove straight to the beach house and just sat on that front porch swing for hours, crying tears of joy and sorrow all mixed together. The house needed work, quite a bit of it actually. The roof had some leaks, the plumbing was ancient, and the electrical system made strange humming noises that worried me. But it was mine. Every mortgage payment, every repair, every improvement came from my own hard work and sacrifice. I spent my weekends there, painting walls, refinishing the hardwood floors on my hands and knees, planting flowers in the front yard. Each improvement felt like a love letter to Daniel, and to the life we'd planned together. Now, I should tell you about my family. My younger sister Linda is 57, and has always been what you might call a free spirit. She married young to a man named Robert, who had big ideas but never quite managed to make any of them work. They had 2 children, Ashley, who's now 32, and Brandon, who's 29. Linda never held down a steady job for long, always saying that traditional work stifled her creativity. Robert worked in sales, but his income was unpredictable at best. They lived in a rented house about 40 miles inland from my beach cottage. It wasn't a bad place, but it wasn't great either. The landlord kept raising the rent, and they were always 1 month away from being late on their payments. I'd helped them out financially more times than I could count over the years. A few hundred here for car repairs, 1,000 there for medical bills. I never asked to be paid back because that's what family does, right? You help each other. But Linda had always been a little jealous of me, though she'd never admit it out loud. She'd make little comments about how I was the favorite daughter, how I got all the breaks, how easy I had it. Never mind that I worked 60-hour weeks for 30 years while she was meditating and trying to find herself. Never mind that Daniel and I lived in a tiny apartment for the first 15 years of our marriage so we could save money. In Linda's mind, success just fell into some people's laps, and I was one of the lucky ones. When I told Linda about buying the beach house, her reaction was less than enthusiastic. We were having lunch at a diner halfway between our 2 homes, something we tried to do once a month. I was so excited to share my news, practically bouncing in my seat as I showed her pictures on my phone. She looked at the photos, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then she said something that should have been my first warning sign. She said, "Well, that's nice for you, Margaret. Must be nice to have money to throw around on vacation homes while some of us are barely scraping by." I tried to explain that it wasn't a vacation home, that I'd worked and saved for years to afford it, that it was my retirement plan. But she just waved her hand dismissively and changed the subject. I let it go because I didn't want to fight. I've never been good with confrontation, especially not with family. Over the next few months, I poured my heart into fixing up the cottage, I hired a contractor to fix the roof and update the electrical system. I spent my weekend scrubbing and painting and making the place feel like home. I bought secondhand furniture from estate sales and refinished each piece with care. I hung pictures of Daniel and me on the walls, placed his favorite books on the shelves, and made the master bedroom into a peaceful sanctuary with soft white linens and pale blue walls that reminded me of the ocean. By late summer, the house was ready. It wasn't perfect, but it was beautiful in its simplicity. I'd planned to start spending long weekends there, maybe even retire early if I could manage it. I'd invited Linda and her family to come visit once I got it all set up. I wanted to share my happiness with them, to have them see what their support over the years had meant to me. But then something happened that I never could have anticipated, something that would test every bit of strength and wisdom I'd accumulated over my 62 years on this earth. It was a Wednesday in September, and I was at work, deep in a meeting about hospital budget allocations. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it. Then it buzzed again, and again. Finally, I excused myself and stepped into the hallway to check what was so urgent. I had 7 missed calls from my neighbor at the beach house, Mrs. Kowalski, a sweet 70-year-old woman who lived next door and who I'd asked to keep an eye on the place when I wasn't there. My heart started racing as I called her back. "Margaret, oh thank goodness," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't know if I should call you or the police first. There's a moving truck at your house. People are carrying furniture inside. I thought maybe you'd sold the place and forgot to tell me. But then I saw it was your sister. She told me you'd given them permission to move in because their landlord kicked them out." I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My hands went cold and my vision got a little blurry around the edges. "Mrs. Kowalski," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I gave them no such permission. This is my house. Can you see what they're doing right now?" "They're unloading boxes," she said. "Lots of boxes. Furniture too. Margaret, they have children with them. Linda's daughter Ashley brought her 2 little ones, and Brandon's there with his girlfriend. It looks like the whole family is moving in." I told Mrs. Kowalski I was on my way and that she shouldn't worry. Then I called Linda. She answered on the 3rd ring, and I could hear the sounds of people talking and moving things in the background. "Oh, hi, Margaret," she said, her tone aggressively casual. "I was going to call you later. We had a little emergency. Our landlord sold the property and gave us 30 days to get out, but then he changed his mind and wanted us out in a week. Can you believe that? So I remembered you have this big empty beach house just sitting there, and I thought, well, it's family property, right? We'll just stay here until we get back on our feet. You're always at your regular place anyway, and this house is just going to waste." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst right out of my chest. "Linda," I said, struggling to keep my voice level, "that is not family property. That is my property. I bought it with my money. You cannot just move into someone else's house without asking." "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Margaret," she said, and I could hear the eye roll in her voice. "It's not like you're even using it. We're family. Family helps family. You've got plenty of money and plenty of space. We'll just stay for a few months until Robert finds a better job and we can afford a new place. It's no big deal. Linda, listen to me very carefully," I said, my voice shaking now. "You need to stop unloading that truck right now and leave my house immediately. You do not have my permission to be there." There was a long pause. Then Linda's voice came back, harder now, with that edge I'd heard so many times when we were kids and she wasn't getting her way. "Really, Margaret? Really? After everything we've been through as a family? After Mom and Dad died and we only had each other? You're going to throw us out on the street? Yo. Her own sister and her grandchildren?" "You're not on the street," I said, feeling tears starting to well up in my eyes. "You have a week to find somewhere else. You can stay in a motel. You can ask Robert's family. But you cannot stay in my house without my permission." "Well, we're already here," Linda said, her voice defiant now. "And we're staying. What are you going to do about it? Call the police on your own family? Everyone will think you're a heartless monster." And then she hung up on me. I stood there in the hospital hallway, staring at my phone, unable to process what had just happened. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. my own sister, the person I'd helped and supported for decades, had just stolen my house right out from under me. I went back into the meeting room, told my colleagues I had a family emergency, and left work immediately. The drive to the beach house felt like it took forever, even though it was only 45 minutes. My mind was racing the entire time. Part of me kept thinking there must be some misunderstanding, that Linda would see reason once I got there. But another part of me, the part that had known Linda for 57 years, knew exactly what I was walking into. When I pulled up to the house, the moving truck was still there, backed up to my front porch. The front door was wide open, and I could see people moving around inside. My beautiful, peaceful sanctuary had been invaded. I sat in my car for a moment, trying to gather my courage and decide what to do. Then I saw Ashley come out the front door, carrying one of her toddlers on her hip. Ashley had always been sweet when she was young, but somewhere in her 20s, she'd become just like her mother, always looking for the easy way out, always expecting other people to solve her problems. She saw my car and waved cheerfully, like this was all perfectly normal. I got T of the car and walked up the front path. My legs felt shaky, but I kept moving forward. Ashley met me at the bottom of the porch steps, smiling like we'd planned this whole thing together. "Aunt Margaret, isn't this great?" she said. "Mom said you were letting us stay here. The kids are going to love being so close to the beach. We've already picked out bedrooms. I'm taking the one with the ocean view, and Brandon and Tessa are taking the other one upstairs. Mom and Dad are taking the master bedroom since they're the oldest. You don't mind, do you? You can stay in your regular house." I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. "Ashley, honey, your mother didn't tell you the truth. I never gave anyone permission to move in here. This is my house, I bought it myself. You all need to pack up your things and leave." The smile faded from Ashley's face. "But Mom said you were being difficult about it at first, but that you'd come around once you saw how much we needed help. She said family helps family. Family does help family," I agreed, "but there's a difference between helping and being taken advantage of. I've helped your mother financially many times over the years, and I've never asked for anything back. But I never said anyone could move into my home without asking me first." Ashley's expression hardened, and suddenly she looked so much like Linda it took my breath away. "So, you're just going to let us be homeless? Is that it? You're going to throw 2 little babies out on the street because you're selfish and greedy?" Before I could respond, Linda came out onto the porch. She'd changed into comfortable clothes and had her hair pulled back in a ponytail, like she was settling in for the long haul. "Margaret," she said, her voice tight. "I thought we settled this on the phone. We're staying. You can either accept it gracefully or make a scene, but our way, we're not leaving." Robert came out behind her, looking uncomfortable. Robert had always been a weak man, easily led by Linda's stronger personality. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Brandon appeared in the doorway too, a tall young man with his father's build and his mother's stubbornness. His girlfriend Tessa stood behind him, looking uncertain of the whole situation. I looked at all of them standing, on my porch, in my house, claiming my dream as their own. And something inside me just clicked. I'd spent my whole life being the responsible one, the peacemaker, the one who gave in to keep everyone happy. I'd bitten my tongue through 1,000 small hurts and slights. But this wasn't small. This was my home, my security, my future. This was the dream I'd shared with Daniel, the man I'd loved more than anything in the world. "You're right, Linda," I said quietly. "We're not going to settle this between us. I'm calling the police." Linda laughed, actually laughed. "Go ahead. Call them. Tell them your poor, desperate family is squatting in your vacation home. See how that makes you look. Everyone in our family, everyone in our church, everyone we know, they'll all know what kind of person you really are." "I'm sorry you see it that way," I said, pulling out my phone. "But this is breaking and entering, and it's trespassing. I don't care how it looks. This is my property, and you don't have permission to be here." I dialed 911, my hands shaking so badly I almost couldn't hit the numbers. When the dispatcher answered, I explained the situation as calmly as I could. The dispatcher said they'd send officers right away and advised me to wait in my car until they arrived. As I walked back to my car, Linda shouted after me. "You're making a huge mistake, Margaret. You're choosing a house over your family. Don't come crying to me when you're old and alone and have nobody." I sat in my car with the doors locked and waited. Ashley was crying now, holding her children close. Robert was pacing back and forth on the porch. Brandon looked angry, his arms crossed over his chest. Linda just stood there, staring at me through the windshield with an expression of pure fury. Mrs. Kowalski came out of her house and walked over to my car. I rolled down the window, grateful for a friendly face. "I'm sorry you have to go through this, dear," she said, patting my hand. "But you're doing the right thing. If you let them push you around now, they'll never stop." "I just can't believe my own sister would do this," I said, wiping away tears. "After everything we've been through together, sometimes family is the hardest thing we have to deal with," Mrs. Kowalski said wisely. "Because they know exactly how to hurt us, and they think love means they can get away with anything." 2 police cars arrived about 15 minutes later. 2 officers got out and approached my car first. I explained the situation, showed them my deed to the property, and my identification. They were professional and kind, which helped me feel a little less shaky. Then they went up to talk to Linda and the others. I could see Linda gesturing dramatically, playing the victim, probably telling them what a cruel and heartless sister I was. But the officers were unmoved. They explained that regardless of family relationships, I was the legal owner of the property, and Linda and her family were trespassing. They gave them 30 minutes to gather their belongings and leave the premises, or they would be arrested. Linda looked like she wanted to argue further, but Robert finally found his voice and convinced her to cooperate. I watched as they started loading things back into the truck, moving much faster now than when they'd been unloading. Ashley was still crying, shooting me hurt looks. Every few minutes. Brandon slammed boxes around angrily. Linda moved with tight, jerky motions, her face a mask of rage. It took them nearly an hour to get everything loaded back up. The officers waited patiently, occasionally helping carry larger items to speed the process along. When the truck was finally loaded, Linda came over to my car one last time. I rolled down the window, hoping maybe she'd apologize, hoping we could find some way to repair this. "I hope you're happy," she said, her voice cold and flat. "You've destroyed this family. Don't expect to hear from me or see your nieces and nephews ever again. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a sister anymore." She walked away before I could respond, got in the passenger seat of the truck, and they drove off. Brandon and Tessa followed in their car, and Ashley loaded her kids into her minivan and left too. Just like that, they were gone, and I was left sitting in my car, shaking and crying, wondering how my life had gone so wrong so fast. The police officers came over to check on me before they left. The older one, a man in his 50s with kind eyes, said something I'll never forget. "Ma'am, I know this was hard, but you did the right thing. Setting boundaries with family is one of the hardest things a person can do. But if you'd let them stay, they'd never leave, and they'd never respect you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no." After they left, I sat there for a long time, staring at my house. Mrs. Kowalski had gone back inside, giving me privacy to process everything. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in those orange and pink shades that Daniel and I had always loved. I thought about him, about how he'd always supported me, always had my back, even when it meant standing up to difficult people. "I did it, Daniel," I whispered to the empty car. "I stood up for us, for our dream." Finally, I got out of the car and went inside to assess the damage. They'd been careful not to break anything, I'll give them that. But the house felt violated somehow, like the peaceful sanctuary I'd created had been disturbed. I walked through each room, straightening things, opening windows to let in fresh air, trying to reclaim the space as my own. In the master bedroom, Linda had already put sheets on the bed, her sheets, not mine. I stripped them off and remade the bed with my own linens. In the kitchen, Ashley had started unpacking groceries into the refrigerator. I took everything out and put it in a box, planning to drop it off at a food bank later. In the smaller bedroom, Brandon and Tessa had hung some of their clothes in the closet. I carefully removed them and folded them into a neat pile, which I'd mail to them later. As I worked, I cried, not just sad tears but angry tears too. I was furious at Linda for thinking she could just take what was mine, I was hurt that she'd chosen to destroy our relationship rather than respect my boundaries. I was disappointed that my niece and nephews had gone along with it, that they'd been raised to believe that family obligation meant one person had to sacrifice everything while others took whatever they wanted. But I was also proud of myself. Maybe for the first time in a long time, I'd stood my ground, I'd protected what was mine, I'd honored the dream that Daniel and I had shared. It had cost me my relationship with my sister maybe permanently, but I'd done what was right. That night I slept in my beach house for the first time. I lay in bed listening to the distant sound of the waves and the wind rustling through the trees outside. The house felt peaceful again, like it was thanking me for protecting it. I thought about all the years Daniel and I had dreamed of this moment, and even though he wasn't there physically, I felt his presence in every corner of the house we'd planned together. The next morning, I woke up early and made coffee on my little porch, watching the sun rise over the ocean. Mrs. Kowalski came over with fresh muffins, and we sat together in comfortable silence for a while before she spoke. "How are you holding up, dear?" she asked. "I'm okay," I said, and I was surprised to find I meant it. "It hurts, but I know I did the right thing." "Your sister will come around eventually," Mrs. Kowalski said. "Or she won't. Either way, you've got to live your life on your own terms. You've earned that right over the next few weeks." I changed all the locks on the house, something I should have thought to do immediately. I also installed a simple security system with cameras, just in case Linda got any ideas about coming back when I wasn't there. I updated my will too, making it clear that the property would go to charity rather than to family members who'd shown they couldn't be trusted. I didn't hear from Linda at all for the first month. No calls, no texts, nothing. Ashley blocked me on social media. Brandon wouldn't answer when I tried to call. It hurt more than I wanted to admit, losing contact with my nieces and nephews. I'd watched them grow up, been there for birthdays and graduations, but they'd made their choice, and I had to respect that, even as it broke my heart. Then one day, about 6 weeks after the incident, I got a phone call from Robert. He sounded tired and defeated. "Margaret," he said, "I'm calling without Linda knowing. I wanted to apologize. What we did was wrong. I knew it was wrong, but Linda convinced me that you'd come around, that you'd understand. I should have stood up to her, but I've never been good at that." "Where are you staying?" I asked. "We found a place," he said. "It's not great, smaller than our old rental and more expensive. Inda's had to get a job at a grocery store, which she's not happy about. The kids are all crammed into a 2-bedroom apartment in town. But we're managing." "I'm glad you found something," I said, meaning it. "Robert, I want you to understand something. I wasn't trying to be cruel. But I worked for that house. It represents 30 years of marriage and dreams. I couldn't just let someone take it from me, even family." "I know," he said quietly. "Linda doesn't see it that way, but I do. She thinks you should have just shared it with us because that's what family does. But I think maybe we've been taking advantage of your generosity for too long. Maybe this was the wake-up call we needed." We talked for a little while longer, and while it didn't fix everything, it felt like a small step toward healing. Robert promised to work on Linda, to try to help her see my side of things. I didn't hold out much hope, but I appreciated the effort. Life settled into a new normal. I started spending every weekend at the beach house, and it became the sanctuary I'd always dreamed it would be. I took long walks on the beach, collected shells, read books on my porch swing. I joined a local book club and made new friends. I even started dating again, meeting a nice man named Tom who was a retired teacher. Nothing serious, just companionship and someone to have dinner with occasionally. Mrs. Kowalski became a good friend. We'd have coffee together, most mornings when I was there, sharing stories and keeping each other company. She'd lost her husband 10 years earlier, so she understood what it was like to rebuild your life after such a profound loss. 3 months after the incident, I got a letter in the mail. Not an email or a text, but an actual handwritten letter. It was from Ashley. My hand shook as I opened it, not knowing what to expect. "Dear Aunt Margaret," it began. "I've been and king a lot about what happened, and I wanted to write to you. I'm not ready to call yet, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Mom told us that you'd agreed to let us move in, and I believed her because I wanted to believe her. I wanted an easy solution to our problems. But as I've had time to think about it, I realized that even if you had agreed, we shouldn't have imposed on you like that. The letter went on for several pages. Ashley talked about how hard it had been adjusting to their new living situation, but also how it had forced her to take responsibility for her own life in a way she never had before. She'd gone back to school to get her nursing degree. She was working part-time and taking classes, and while it was hard with two little ones, she felt proud of herself for the first time in years. I want my daughters to grow up knowing that they need to work for what they want, she wrote, not just expect other people to give it to them. I think maybe that's something my mom never learned, and she passed that attitude on to me. But I'm trying to break that cycle. I cried when I read that letter, but they were good tears this time. I wrote back immediately, telling Ashley how proud I was of her, how much I loved her, and that I'd always be there if she needed me. We started corresponding regularly, and eventually, we progressed to phone calls and then visits. She brought her daughters to the beach house one Saturday, and we spent the day building sandcastles and collecting shells. It felt like a new beginning. Brandon took longer to come around, but eventually, he did too. It turned out that the whole situation had caused a rift between him and Linda as well. He'd started questioning some of his mother's behavior and choices, and he'd decided to distance himself from the drama and focus on building his own life. He apologized for his part in the incident. And while our relationship wasn't quite what it had been, we were slowly rebuilding trust. Linda, however, never apologized, not directly anyway. But about 6 months after everything happened, she sent me a birthday card. There was no note inside, just her signature. But the fact that she'd sent it at all felt significant. I took it as an olive branch, a small acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, she was starting to see things differently. I sent her a Christmas card that year, with a photo of me on my porch swing at the beach house, smiling. I didn't write anything preachy or pointed. I just signed it Love, Margaret, and mailed it off. I didn't know if it would make a difference, but I was willing to leave the door open, even if I'd never fully trust her again. Now a year has passed since that awful day, when I found my family moving into my house without permission. The beach house has become everything I dreamed it would be. I've retired from my job at the hospital, something I'd been planning to do anyway. I live at the beach full-time. Now, waking up to the sound of the ocean, spending my days exactly as I please. I've learned so much about myself through this experience. I've learned that kindness doesn't mean letting people walk all over you. I've learned that family relationships are important, but not if they require you to sacrifice your own well-being and dignity. I've learned that standing up for yourself, even when it's hard, even when it costs you relationships, is sometimes the most loving thing you can do for everyone involved. Mrs. Kowalski and I have become like sisters, the kind of sisters I always wished Linda and I could have been. We look out for each other, celebrate each other's victories, comfort each other through the hard times. Tom has become a regular fixture in my life, and while we're taking things slow, I'm enjoying having someone to share my days with again. Ashley visits regularly with her daughters, and I love being part of their lives. We have a relationship now that's based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Brandon has started coming by occasionally too, usually bringing Tessa with him. They got married last month, and they asked me to be part of the ceremony. It was a small, intimate wedding, and it meant the world to me that they wanted me there. Linda and I are not close, and maybe we never will be again. But we're civil. She sends the occasional text message now, usually something brief and superficial, but it's better than the cold silence. Robert tells me she's still angry, still thinks I should have just shared the house with them. But he also says she's become more responsible, working full-time, managing their finances better. Maybe the experience taught her something after all, even if she'll never admit it. People sometimes ask me if I regret calling the police that day. They ask if I think I was too harsh, if I should have tried harder to work things out, and my answer is always the same. No, I don't regret it. I protected what was mine. I honored the dream I shared with Daniel. I showed everyone, including myself, that I was worthy of respect and consideration. This house, this beautiful little cottage by the ocean, represents more than just a building or a piece of property. It represents my strength, my resilience, my ability to stand up for myself even when it's terrifying. It represents 30 years of love with Daniel, 3 years of grinding work to make our dream come true, and 1 day of courage when I had to choose between being liked and being respected. Every morning, I sit on my porch with my coffee and watch the sun come up over the ocean. I think about Daniel, and I talk to him sometimes, telling him about my day, about the people I've met, about how happy I am. I think he'd be proud of me for standing my ground. I think he'd love this house and the peace it brings me. Life is too short to spend it being a doormat for other people, even people you love. Life is too precious to let others dictate how you should use the resources you've worked hard to earn. And family, real family, doesn't ask you to sacrifice your dreams for their convenience. Real family respects your boundaries, celebrates your successes, and stands by you, even when it's hard. I'm 63 years old now, and I'm finally living the life Daniel and I always dreamed of. It looks a little different than we'd imagined because he's not here to share it with me. But I like to think that somewhere, somehow, he knows I made it. I kept our promise. I built our dream house by the ocean, and I'm living in it every single day, grateful for every sunrise, every wave, every moment of peace. And that, my friends, is worth fighting for. That's worth standing up for. That's worth protecting, no matter the cost. The hardest lessons in life often come from the people we love most. But those lessons, as painful as they are, shape us into who we're meant to become. I'm stronger now than I ever was before. I'm more confident, more certain of my own worth, more willing to set boundaries and enforce them. And ironically, the very situation that could have destroyed me ended up being the thing that saved me. So if you're facing a situation where someone you love is asking you to sacrifice something important to you, something you've worked hard for, something that represents your dreams and your future, I want you to know that it's okay to say no. It's okay to protect what's yours. It's okay to choose yourself, even when it feels selfish, even when others make you feel guilty. You are worthy of respect. You are worthy of having your boundaries honored. And you are worthy of living the life you've dreamed of, worked for, and earned. Don't let anyone, not even family, take that away from you. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own struggles with family boundaries, or if it inspired you to stand up for yourself, I'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to like this story, share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more stories about real life, real struggles, and real courage. Leave a comment below telling me about a time you had to set a difficult boundary with someone you loved. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.